everyone. Today I am going to be briefly discussing the film Metropolis, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, Metropolis. I'm not sure how the syllables work their way out, but I'm hoping that that's the way it's pronounced. But regardless of the film's pronunciation, it is actually a foreign German film, surprisingly, and a very old one at that. It was made in 1927, and I am taking this as a fan request because somebody asked me if they could review this one in particular, and I've actually not heard of this film, surprisingly. It sounded familiar, but I don't remember ever watching it or seeing it. And then I did notice that there was a robot in it, and the robot seemed familiar to me, or at least I think I've maybe seen it referenced a couple times, but I had no clue exactly as to what this film was about or what it was trying to address. And basically I'm going to kind of discuss it today, and I guess why I would put it in the classic category. They call it a German expressionist epic science fiction film. So basically, the film takes place during a futuristic time period within the city of Metropolis. And within this metropolis, you have working people who run various machines so the metropolis can stay lit and well kept. And then you have the very rich, aristocratic, I guess, type individuals who live off that industrial hard labor and enjoy themselves in like lavish gardens and can, get transported on. I think what they were trying to go for was some kind of monorail system. And they have these really gigantic buildings, and they just live sort of in kind of like a paradise, so to speak. And the film sort of centers around, again, sort of the industrial labor force rising up against those who are in charge of them. And in particular, the main character of this movie is named Frieder, and he's played by Gustav Fröhlich. And basically, he is the son, actually, of the, I guess you could say, ruler of Metropolis, who is named Joe Friederson, played by Alfred Abel, or Abel. I'm not sure about the pronunciation there either. And basically, he sort of goes against his father, and you'll sort of see that in kind of the beginning of the film. And I would like to mention, too, that this film is actually a silent film, because, again, it is relatively old, 1927, so we don't really have a whole lot of dialogue. And the dialogue that is presented to you on a black screen. So you'll have a black screen and then some writing. So you won't really get the full gist of what the people are saying within the film, because not a lot of the dialogue is actually expressed. But the actors, I think, do a really good job of expressing the various emotions that they're going through as they go through the plot and the circumstances. And what inspires sort of Frieder to kind of go against his father is this woman named Maria, who shows up in the beginning of the film, as you'll see. And she's played by Brigitte Helm. And basically, she sort of is kind of a figurehead for the industrial people. You'll see how she's kind of like displayed in sort of a religious light. And again, there's kind of like religious symbolism thrown in there too, in regards to the story and what it kind of centers around, because you'll see how they use like the Tower of Babel to sort of reference again kind of what's going on within their world. So she is sort of depicted as this kind of inspiration and high figure to the people that do the industrial labor. So that's basically the gist, though, of the plot in sort of a nutshell. And again, the thing is I don't really want to explain what happens, because I think that just leads into spoilers. So it's kind of hard for me to discuss this one in particular. But what I will say is that it kind of takes the sort of good versus evil aspect, of the industrial people who are being oppressed, and the rich people, in particular, Joe Friederson, and sort of taking these two sort of sides and sort of thematically bringing them sort of together. And I think that's really what makes, I think, the film sort of unique, is that there's not really necessarily a winner in this kind of a story. It's not designed to be like the superhero bad guy versus good guy kind of movie. And I did not see that coming, actually. I really thought that there was going to be like, it was really setting up this good versus evil kind of aspect within the film. But when it sort of changes ultimately at the end, and it develops into something a little bit more interesting, then I feel like that makes it a fairly unique film in how it approaches this. And there's this emphasis on a mediator, and Frieder ends up sort of becoming that mediator, and you'll see why and how. And this ultimately plays into a huge part of the themes of this movie, which I thought were really well executed. I think the whole theme that this movie had going for it was really interesting, and was really designed to show that that together we can make the world a better place. So I think that's what really hit home for me, at least. And also I think the designs and how they made the robot, and again, I don't really want to give away what goes on with the robot, because that's really kind of an important plot point. So you just need to know that there's a robot in it. You'll figure it out if you decide to watch the film. But the ultimate designs of how they make Metropolis look, and how the artistic sort of expression that's really a main part of the film, I think is really highlighted in how Metropolis is structured. And some of it's kind of strange, there's one point where the industrial people, in particular Frieder, who ends up becoming one of them essentially, they have to use this, it's kind of like a clock, and I don't know if it's supposed to be like that they turn this machine around so that the clocks keep going or something like that. I don't know if that's really what the intention was, but some of it just looks kind of it just looks really artsy. It doesn't really look like something that somebody would actually be doing in maybe such a circumstance and surrounding. So it does have that sort of artistic quality to it that makes it sort of stand out and be unique. But they do have a very sort of powerful scene in the beginning where Frieder walks in and he sees how poorly the industrial people are being treated, and this kind of sparks something within him, and he realizes that the world isn't so happy and cozy like he was having in the beginning, where you see him just kind of frolicking and having fun. So again, I think it does offer that sense of downtrodden misery that the industrial labor people are going through, but at the same time it kind of delves into being a little bit more artsy and a little bit more non-realistic. It could maybe take some viewers out of the film, but for me personally, I didn't mind the whole design and approach that the film was going for. But I think there was a lot of heart put into this film in particular. I think even though it's old and even though there's barely any dialogue to it, there's still a lot of emotions that come out of the characters. And I liked how there was a lot of dynamic to the characters, even though they weren't really given a whole lot to say, and they were able to express things through emotion. And again, this movie is, like a lot of older films, are more based upon emotion and artistic expression rather than being realistic and grounded, like a lot of films are trying to do today. Even though they, still, Hollywood and complete realism are not equals for sure. But in regards to the level of realism, I feel like more movies that are today have more realistic kinds of plot points and more realistic kinds of stories, and a lot of the other older films are a little bit more romanticized. And I think this film in particular really tries to embrace that emotionally driven aspect that that has been present in a lot of older films. And I think it holds itself to being a classic. Is it strange at times? Oh yes, it can be very strange at times. There were parts of this movie where I did not know what was going on. But again, some of them, the scenes where I don't know what's going on, they're kind of short. But again, it does have that kind of, it just has that, it's just a very, I think, European-like approach, because I've seen a lot of other European films, and a lot of other European films kind of do this, where they put in things that don't really make sense, and are just very out there, and completely lack any kind of logic, or don't really resemble anything to the story. Ultimately, it just kind of is there as a kind of like a big-lipped alligator moment, and you will have a little bit of that in this movie. Not a whole lot, but some of it, and it gets a little strange, and I don't know what to think at times. I get confused, but regardless of that, I still think Metropolis has a lot to offer as a film, and I really like the whole aspect that it takes to the thematic approach of setting it up in a certain way, but then ultimately it turns into something more within the end. And I think that's what I think will satisfy a lot of movie-going viewers, especially with a film that is so old. And usually a lot of old films have relied on this good versus evil kind of struggle. And have ultimately made one person kind of come out on top. So I think it has a lot of heart in regards to the final product, and I think it's definitely a film worth recommending. And I would put it in the classic category because it's old, it has unique designs, and it's a silent film, so I think silent films are really an interesting part of movie history, and I think hold a lot of significance when it comes to filmmaking, because they really were the first. Before sound was even there, they still had film, and I think that's just really fascinating, and I think it's definitely something that I think a lot of people can even enjoy today. But again, if you are not into the whole silent treatment, if you do not enjoy maybe not understanding certain things because there's no dialogue being spoken, this might kind of be a problem for you. For me personally, it wasn't an issue because I was kind of wrapped up in the story. Even when there were certain things that were going on that I didn't understand, it didn't really ultimately bother me because I felt like, okay, the film's going to get somewhere. I just know it. Somewhere it's going to go. So again, I think it just depends on what kind of a viewer you are and what kind of films you like. But ultimately, I would recommend this one as being a classic film. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. I'll be sure to put a link to the film below because you can actually watch it. But I think that's ultimately all I can say. Take care, everybody, and thank you so much for watching.